Even as US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi are set to meet for that very significant bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Evian over here in France. This is the third and the final day of the G7 summit. There is a growing domestic outrage. The political opposition is up in arms against the government because there have been 3 seafarers that have died last week. These seafarers were transiting the Strait of Hormuz and they were attacked by the US naval forces. There has at this point of time condemnation that has been expressed by these opposition leaders and masses within the country as to why is it that the US administration has not expressed its regret and expressed its condolences for the death of the 3 seafarers that belong to India. In fact, in the past few weeks, there has been a démarche that has been issued twice and a protest that has been lodged by the Indian government against the American embassy and the American government. The charge d'affaires of United States of America to India has been summoned twice over. Not just that, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar dialed up the US State Secretary Marco Rubio and raised his discomfort and outrage over the death of these 3 seafarers by the US naval forces. But the American side has clearly stated that it was because of the fact that this commercial vessel was violating the US blockade. It was a shadow fleet. It was carrying Iranian oil and it was moving towards the Iranian port while the US blockade was on. Therefore, the US naval forces had no choice but to attack the ship. There were 60 of those messages that were sent to the naval to the commercial vessel to turn around, but the commercial vessel did not pay heed to those warnings that had been issued. Now comparisons are being drawn with regards to what happened in 2013 with an Indian diplomat that was posted in the United States of America, Devyani Khobragade. She was publicly handcuffed in front of her daughter's school in America for the alleged transgressions. There was an issue of visa for her domestic help. There were charges leveled against her for domestic abuse. She was sent back to India and India had raised protests. They were at highest levels in the government from the External Affairs Ministry who raised this issue with America. In fact, so much was the outrage within the government of India back in 2013 that there were barricades from the US embassy that had completely been removed. There were in fact action that was taken against the staff and officers of the US embassy in Delhi. So the question that the opposition is asking at this point of time is that why has there not been a similar outrage that has been shown, a strong act that has been made by the Indian government, made by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, keeping in mind that this is an embarrassment for the country. This is an embarrassment for the Indian government for not being able to extract an apology, a message of regret and condolence from the US administration. They at this point of time are claiming it is a massive diplomatic failure from the government side. And in wake of this trade deal that is at this point of time, as if sources are to be believed, is at its last mile. The loose ends are being tied up. In all likelihood, within the few weeks, it is going to be all worked out. All work is going to be completed, and then the only thing that will remain is to sign the trade deal, the bilateral trade agreement between the United States of America and India. So, will the death of these 3 seafarers overshadow the trade deal that has very painstakingly been built step by step, week by week, over the last 16 months, despite the various upheavals that have taken place when it comes to the diplomatic and strategic relationship between America and India is a question that is being posed by a domestic audience, the masses in the country, and more particularly the political opposition. So it is going to be an interesting few hours, because like I said, there is going to be a bilateral that is going to happen between the Prime Minister of India and the US President. Will the Prime Minister personally take up this matter and speak to US President Donald Trump on this entire issue? We remember that yesterday afternoon there were remarks that were made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during a working session that was taking place between the G7 nations and the other 4 nations that were invited, along with the European Union, where he raised the matter while US President Donald Trump was sitting right beside him. He spoke about how it is extremely essential that seafarers, the sailors on commercial vessels, be allowed to transit through the Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf region, in the Persian Gulf, without any threat to their life, without any threat to their ships and vessels. And he said that this will have to be ensured by all entities, by all sides, working together in cooperation to ensure that this West Asia conflict ends, without naming any particular country, without naming any particular person or armed forces. The Indian Prime Minister raised this matter. So I'll keep bringing you updates from here at the G7 Avion Summit. It's just a few hours from now when that very significant bilateral takes place. All eyes are on these talks, the 45-minute long talks that both leaders are going to have in just a short while. So stay tuned.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.